The 1981 Chevrolet Camaro Z28 Yenko Turbo Z. One of the most powerful muscle cars of its era, but you probably didn't know that. You see, despite the rapidly growing popularity of performance cars in the US since they first launched in the early 1960s, the quality of performance cars produced between 1980 and 1983 was abysmal and downright shocking. From mediocre horsepower levels to ugly designs, the iron block V8 engines that were churned out in these cars were not hitting the standard in terms of acceleration, handling, and overall user experience. It almost looked like the muscle car market was dying. Well, all that was true until the Turbo Z of the 1981 Chevrolet Camaro Z28 was released. Looking back now, it is not so surprising to see why the Yenko Turbo Z became a huge success. Even now, an unpopular opinion among gearheads is that the late Don Yenko, an American motorsport racing driver whose company was known for creating customized performance cars, saw the future of the industry and took a crack at making a lasting impact. Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we will look at the interesting history of the 1981 Yenko Turbo Z, the ultra-rare turbocharged Camaro that General Motors was too scared to make. To truly understand the uniqueness of this car, we need to start from the beginning. So, in 1981, General Motors released the Chevrolet Camaro Z28, and surprisingly, it remained largely unchanged from its 1980 predecessor. However, the Z28 was a big nameplate in the 1970s, and so GM got away with not overly improving the car. The 1981 Camaro featured the same 5.7-liter V8 engine as the 1980 model, although the 1981 version was equipped with a computer command control unit, or CC unit for short. The CCC unit essentially regulated the power of the engine, which in turn reduced the emissions of the car. The thing is, there were new emission regulations around that time that restricted the level of emissions muscle cars were allowed to produce, hence the control unit the car came with. With these regulations, performance cars that had already built a reputation for churning out over 400 horsepower could now barely produce 200 horsepower. To make up for this restriction, car manufacturers at the time resorted to using deep dish wheels, vinyl graphics, body kits, and other gimmicks that sold the illusion of speed. For instance, the 5.7 V8 engine with the integrated CCC unit in the 1981 Chevrolet Camaro Z28 could only produce a weak 173 horsepower. To make things worse, the Camaro weighed roughly 3,500 pounds. By 1981, Don Yenko's company had already built a reputation for building high-performance models of existing sports cars. However, after the release of the customized Vega-based Stinger in 1972, the company simply stopped customizing cars and moved on to selling vehicle parts via catalog. Regardless, when it became clear General Motors was consistently downgrading the performance of the sports cars it was producing, Yenko decided to step in again. The company was not a stranger to building high-performance variants of GM cars that did not hit the mark in terms of performance. In fact, the company has an incredible track record of customizing GM cars. Also, at the time, turbocharging was gradually gaining a respectable foothold in the performance car industry as car manufacturers looked for innovative ways to make their cars faster without violating the strict emission regulations in place. Long story short, we got a turbocharged Z28 Camaro. The Yenko Turbo Z model of the 1981 Chevrolet Camaro featured a turbocharged 350C-powered engine, and although the company never revealed the exact power rating of the engine, experts estimate the engine produced over 300 horsepower, comfortably beating the original Chevy Camaro from General Motors in terms of performance. So how did they achieve this when GM couldn't? Well, the magic was in the water-cooled turbocharged 350 CV8 engine used. You see, the power generated was fed by a Rochester Quadrajet carburetor directly to the wheels using GM's TH353-speed automatic setup, which was the only automatic transmission compatible with the 350C engine in 1981. The company also used a 10-bolt rear differential that packed 3.8 gears for the rear end, while also opting against adding a wastegate to the car. So instead, the car came with a compressor bypass valve, which, according to them, eliminated turbo lag. With this setup, the turbo was directly feeding fuel and air mixtures into the engine cylinders. The result is a beast that can cover a quarter mile within 14.51 seconds. But that's not all. Since the car utilized a turbocharger with water injection and an eco-friendly fuel heating system, The Turbo Z complied with all the emissions regulations at the time, while delivering superior performance compared to the base Camaro. Two versions of the Turbo Z28 Camaro were built, the Stage 1 model and the Stage 1 model. In line with other Yenko customized cars, the 1981 Turbo Z Z28 Camaros did not just feature more powerful engines. They also received full customization, which was one of two reasons only 19 units were ever produced. The other reason the company only built 19 of these turbocharged Camaros was because of production costs. At the time, Yenko had plans in place to produce 200 units, but when an original Z28 from General Motors cost around $8,300 and a Stage 1 Turbo Z had a starting price of $11,000, people were simply not so willing to spend that much on a few upgrades. At the time, the only version worth getting was the Stage II model, which cost double the price of an original Chevy Camaro Z28. Now, of the 19 units produced, 16 are Stage 1, with only 3 categorized as Stage 2. So, not only are these Yenko Camaros rare, with only 3 units produced, but the Stage 2 models are ridiculously rare. The Stage 1 Camaro Turbo Z came with a lot of interesting features. Aside from featuring a turbo system that had the car engine producing 300 ponies instead of the original 175 horsepower, the Stage I models featured a reworked functional hood scoop and 15-inch turbo, white rally wheels, among other aerodynamic enhancements to improve performance. Apart from the aforementioned changes, there wasn't much difference between the base Camaro and the Stage 1 model. As in, you still get the same pivoting steering wheel in the Stage I car, the same F41 suspension setup, and the same 15x7-inch steel wheels and tires. The Stage 2 models also featured the same turbocharger engine as the Stage 1 model, but with a lot of aesthetic changes. The new model featured special decals, Turbo Z branded floor mats, a new leather racing steering wheel, stiffer stabilizer bars, Goodyear wingfoot tires, and a revamped gauge cluster dashboard, among others. And if you were wondering, the major difference between the two models was the Coney shocks and the gold strand brushings integrated into the chassis of the Stage 2 model. Also, camp leather seats were exclusive to the Stage 2 cars. Now, while the performance and overhauled design of the two variants of the 1981 Camaro Turbo Zs do sound interesting, what makes the 19 cars truly special is that they are the final true Yenko Camaros ever built. Earlier in the video, we talked about how the company had moved from customizing vehicles to selling spare parts via catalog in 1981. The thing is, this was merely a general assumption by fans of the brand since the last time the company customized a car was in 1972. Sadly, a year after the 1981 Yenko Camaro was released, Don Yenko sold his dealership, and the company's only facility in Pennsylvania was permanently closed. So, you may be wondering, what's the deal with the 2010 Yenko Camaro? In 2009, General Motors acquired the licensing rights to the Yenko name in a bid to resurrect the brand, as well as to acknowledge the brand's rich history of optimizing Chevrolet cars. While acquiring the right to the name, the plan was simply to develop a brand for General Motors to release limited-run models. This led to Chevrolet showcasing a 2010 Yenko Chevrolet Camaro prototype at the 2009 Las Vegas SEMA show. However, like most concept cars, the prototype was never produced until 2016, when the Yenko 427 Camaro was released. And unlike the last true Camaro, which could only produce 300 horsepower, the 427 Camaro proved to be a worthy successor with its naturally aspirated setup, enabling it to produce 700 horsepower. For context, the Chevy Camaro SS on which the 427 Camaro was based could only churn out 455 horsepower. To continue the limited edition DNA of Yenko cars, only 50 units of the 700 horsepower 2016 427 Camaros were produced. And there you have it. Hopefully, you have learned one or two new things about the Yenko brand and just how rare the 1981 Yenko Turbo Z is among rare cars. In fact, it would be near impossible to find a Stage 2 model for sale with only 3 units ever produced. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so you don't miss our next upload. Thanks for watching!